Thank you guys so much for having me in the morning, really, really early. To be honest, this is not my best time, but I'm making it happen, and I'm grateful that everyone else has showed up, so thank you. So I just want to start and talk a little bit about me and just tell you guys a little bit about who I am. So I'm a creative. Obviously, you looked online, saw some of my stuff, but I am also very empathetic. I, get energy from the people that surround me. A lot of times, and maybe some of you guys can recognize and understand, like staying in the house for days and days and days, and then coming out and like being around other humans, engaging with them, having some fun with them, and then going back. So I'm finding this balance between like my human interactions. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now. So other than that, I love a good cooking documentary. I like starting out this way. It's giving like dating, but not really. And I'm really into like herbal remedies, healthy things. So that's kind of some of my like personal background, so you can get to know me outside of all of the other artwork. But when it comes to the artwork, I pretty much was encouraged to do this thing that I love, right? From my parents, from my grandmother, they instilled in me in a young age that I was able to create. And I was always crafty. I was into beading and stickers and like GIMP, like all of the things with my hands when I was younger. And that pretty much translated into the life that I have now. I will explain that. So when I was 14, I submitted my portfolio for Boston Arts Academy, which is the only arts high school in Boston. And I was accepted, which was awesome. And it pretty much changed my life. So from there, I went to a program like Artists for Humanity, which is also an arts studio in South Boston that's been around for probably as old as I am now, 33. Yeah, so a little longer than I've been around. And these programs pretty much helped me to stay connected to the creative community and the artists that are around me now. After that, I went to Suffolk University, where I got a degree in graphic design. And right after, I was like, oh, I'm gonna go to grad school. So I like jumped right into it. I go to grad school, I start a thesis, and the thesis is how to use art as a tool to create change within communities of color. So I start that, and then I was like, nah, grad school's not for me. So I leave. And right after, I jump into retail. If anybody has worked in retail, it will take you out, okay? It will take you out. So I spent years working in retail. It didn't, it didn't work out too well for me. And eventually, I get into design. I get a job as a graphic designer at the Greater Boston Real Estate Board, and I've been there ever since. So keep that in mind. Full-time job, senior graphic designer in real estate. So around this time, I get this job, I'm getting a little bit stable in this other side of my life. I start to do some freelance work with Boston Public Schools. And a couple years after that, I began selling my artwork. So in 2014, I'm selling, like I had started to make hand-painted glass, not hand-painted glassware, but like cups that were painted. And I sold them on Facebook, right? Drop a PayPal link, like all sorts of things. But the biggest thing I took away from that was the excitement of people purchasing my stuff. Like it's this feeling like, oh my gosh, you guys want this thing that I made with my hands, wow. So that was like a kickoff to this whole new part of my life. So I end up, displaying work in and outside of Boston. I'm super excited, I'm selling work in like DC, Virginia, Martha's Vineyard. I'm like going as many places as I can to share my work. In Boston, I'm selling it at restaurants or displaying it in restaurants and hair salons, and just really trying to get an understanding of this whole like art thing and selling products. So at this time, I don't have a mentor, but I kind of like, I'm figuring it out. So I'm joining like business planning classes. I have different groups that I'm a part of. And I'm just finding my way in this space. So on top of that, so we skip over to the other side, I am still designing. And the one thing about me is I'm very similar to my mom, where she does a million things. And I'm literally a replica of her. So on top of all of those things, I'm still designing. later on in the years, I know I'm like hopping all up and down this timeline, I'm sorry you guys, but I'm working with all these businesses. So I've worked with designing with over 20 businesses in Boston, like small nonprofits or small businesses or folks who are one person show, right? Just trying to get their branding together. I've worked with institutions, I've created logos, done some brand development. So at this time, I'm really just putting my creative hands out everywhere. And some of the bigger projects that I've done, I've worked with the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival. And the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival, I was their designer for like 6 years. I developed their music festival branding from like the inaugural event all the way up until now. And I also worked with Congresswoman Ayana Presley. I worked with Open Streets Boston, which is a City of Boston initiative that is a pilot that just launched this year. And basically they closed down over a mile of streets in different neighborhoods, like high dense neighborhoods in Boston, Roxbury, Dorchester, and Jamaica Plain. And pretty much car-free streets allowing people to come out, to bring their kids out, to enjoy the neighborhood, enjoy people around them. So that was a huge thing for me. I was the director of marketing for both of those simultaneously, and I'm laughing at myself. Because when I say this out loud, I'm like, you really did that. You really did that this year. Like, how did you stay sane? So, I'm sharing all of this with you guys just so you can get an idea of how I roll, how I do things, how I work. A lot of overlap, and I think a lot of it comes from a place of passion. So we fast forward to now, I'm telling you about my design, some strategy work I've done, and now I'm moving into like arts and healing work. So I'm creating this work that is really passionate for me. I'm very vulnerable with, and I'll share that a little bit later. But as I start into moving into arts and healing, I work with the Museum of Fine Arts in their restorative arts program, and that opens up a whole new like teaching door. So now I'm teaching, and pretty much teaching in person, doing workshops, but I'm also providing some creative business classes for artists, as well as social media classes. And if as artists and creative people in whatever field you guys are in, it's different when you're taught by a person who has been there, because they're giving you the real thing. We're not giving you all the fluffy, cute stuff. I'm telling you, like, no, this sucks, and I'm gonna help you move through it so it doesn't suck as much. So that is a little bit about me. And I want to jump into the theme of abundance and how that kind of relates to my story and my background. So when I think of abundance, I was like walking through my house earlier this week and I was like, oh, what am I going to talk about? And when I think of abundance, I think of my 7-year-old nephew, Tristan, being like, this, wait, that. Like, I imagine him with both of his arms out, like more, extra, overflow, like it's a lot. Like, it just feels like a lot, without complicating it, without reading like a dictionary definition. It's just like visually, it's just a lot. And, it didn't come up as something that was monetary to me. It came up very much internal. And the way that I want to kind of talk to you guys about abundance and how that relates to me is through values, values that I live by that have welcomed abundance into my life. So for me, I think a lot about like the quality of your character and how that speaks volumes. And I would say 3 of the values, that welcome abundance for me are authenticity, community, and vulnerability. So authenticity brings abundance in my life through pretty much showing up in spaces without an agenda, right? Like, I come into a space without, trying to check off a box, climb a ladder, figure out how can this person, move the chess piece around. Like, I really try to connect with people and be who I am, without being authentic. So, I would say 98% of the work I do is around relationship building. Like, all of the stuff that I shared with you guys, I wasn't really marketing heavy, right? Like, my website existed for design. my Instagram is centered around my artwork, but it's not like, you know, there's a red flashing light that's like, graphic designer, I can help you do whatever you need. A lot of the stuff that has come to me has been centered around like really just great conversations, meeting people, and just getting to know the folks around me. And most recently, I was hanging out like after an event at a bar, and I had a great conversation with this woman. Come to find out, she ran a gallery, and we started talking, and we might be working together, right? And it was in such a relaxed environment. I mean, it's the bar, but you know, like it was that kind of like light conversation that brought up this opportunity, and it wasn't, you know, intentional. I wasn't sitting there like, I'm gonna meet this lady and I'm gonna be her designer and my life is gonna be great. Like that, you know, it came naturally. And there are some other situations I've been in where like working on all these teams, and again, if you guys have worked on teams, it can be challenging. There have been instances where folks are, some of them are the loudest in the room. I am not the loudest. I'm not going to scream at you on the Zoom call. I promise I'm not. But there are some that will. And this year and some of the things that I've done, I've been tested in that space of like, sometimes you have that loud person that's like, that's how they feel like they need to get across. And really, for a second I was like, do I need to be loud? Do I need to say something? Do I need to unmute? And it was like, no, you don't. That's not who you are. That's not, you know, that's not how you do things. And truly for me, that's just not my personality. And I find that being strategic and thinking about how you show up in spaces, whether it's virtual or not, is important. And I choose not to. And by choosing not to, it's definitely continued to help the relationships that I have with people and the business relationships I have with people, and has helped me to continue those on and continue to get contracts with them because of the way that I show up, again, authentically. So I would say being authentic, you know, has brought abundance in my life through the tangible things. I would say through the roles as director of marketing for different folks, and leaders in the city who have given me an opportunity, even when my resume didn't say like I knew how to do the thing, right? So I, you know, I was hired as a social media and community manager for a startup a couple years ago, and I didn't have like, you know, I was managing my own social media account. So they, you know, believed in what I did, and that resulted in the opportunity to kind of work with them and build out their brand. So, you know, my authenticity has really helped me to develop these relationships, these long-lasting relationships with folks. Am I talking too fast? I feel like I'm talking fast. Oh, good, yay, okay. All right, so I would say the next thing is being in community. So community is huge for me. You know, being in community brings abundance into my life through really being able to tap into the friends that are around me. These friends are like creative change makers. They're shifting the artistic ecosystem and landscape of Boston through the work that they create, through the things that they say. And I really feed off of their energy and their excitement. So I get the chance to be around them, to pick up the phone, have conversations with them, and it means so much. And the other part of it too, and I don't know, I'm hoping you guys can relate, is when you're in a space and you get to have conversations with people and you feel that energy and you get excited and you're like, it's very much in purpose. Like you get this chance to engage with somebody who brings out this deep thing within you that allows you to live in purpose. And that's how I feel with the community of artists and folks that I know. So as I was thinking about this, I was thinking of the like recycle symbol of how like, you know, you have yourself and you have your community and what that energy looks like when it circulates and how it just continues to go around, which is really awesome. And so I say all of that, but you know, I'm sure you're like, well, how did you build community? And I started out, you know, with heavy in the creative space, so like all the way back to when I was 14, like I'm starting there up until now. And if you didn't have something like that, I would say building community, especially as an adult, is challenging. In some ways you can do that, again, is through being authentic, but also if you do have friends who are artists or creative people, showing up for them, sharing, purchasing their products if you can. If you can't, sharing their work, going to gallery shows, openings, closings, whatever. I actually really like to offer advice and to like send emails or text messages checking in and pass along projects that if I can't do it, like I'm absolutely gonna pass it to you, you can do it. So those are some of the ways that I've built community, and I can definitely talk offline about more of that, but it's been very important for me as an artist and a designer with all the crazy clients and the crazy people. I'm gonna say crazy a lot because I'm like thinking of some things are coming up as I'm talking about this. But yeah, other like some of the tangible things that brought abundance into my life would be like mural projects in communities in my neighborhood. I've been included in like group gallery shows, and I've also had the opportunity to plan projects with people. So those things, you know, the connection to community has brought about like these tangible projects. And lastly, vulnerability. So vulnerability is huge for me because a couple years ago, I, as an artist, you know, was struggling trying to figure out like what am I making and how am I making it? Like I can draw this landscape, I can do a still life, like I'm technically trained, but like what do I really enjoy, you know, designing? What do I really enjoy creating? And I enjoy creating images of Black women, and that's it. Like that's all. And I mean, there's a really deep reason behind it. Like, I should have started with that. But, I mean, I say it that way because, you know, when you make the decision to do this thing that feels really good to you, it shows up in so many different ways. It becomes much deeper than, like, I did this thing. And I decided to create images of Black women because, as a Black woman, you know, I like to share my experiences through my work and all of the emotions that I have, right? Without, like, questioning it. And I remember when I made the decision, I started to draw Black women more, it was just easier. Like without making it weird and complicated, like you do something, it feels good, it feels easy, boom, that's it. Like that's what it felt like. And as I started to do that more, a lot of the technical things came out, a lot of the feelings, I started to understand more, but really moving from a space of like, I decided to make this, and this makes me feel good. So what you know, after pretty much starting that, I moved into developing my first gallery show, which was called Forgiveness is a Place, Welcome. And I had it in 2021. And the show was centered around vulnerability, healing, and femininity. And it was my journey. Years before this, I went through a breakup, and then I had a cousin pass away, and then I had a friend break up. So all these things are happening. Oh yeah, and it's COVID. Like, all these things are going on. And you know, the work that was created for the show wasn't actually made for a show. It was created because I needed to make something, right? I needed to put these emotions somewhere, and they ended up going into this artwork. So I have this art show. I display it in different chapters. So you're going through the chapters of like what happens when you go through a breakup. Then it goes through transformation and all types of other things. And I invite folks to the gallery. And what starts to happen is people are now like talking to me about really interesting things like their divorces. And then they're talking to me about their breakups and where they're at. So it was like this body of work opened up this whole new door for people to speak to me with forgiveness and vulnerability. So it's like people almost stepped into this room and had this safe space to share who they are, you know, and the things that they're going through. So it was like really like my honesty and vulnerability allowed people to show up to me that way. So this was a whole different thing. I was like, whoa, like what's going on here? People are telling me about their divorces. And I really appreciated it because the thing about me is I can share just enough. Like I'm really good at being like, and I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my artwork, but I'm not gonna share anything personal, and you're gonna feel like you really know me. And it's not that it's a lot. Like I do, you know, I am sharing this personal thing, but it was like I took this step over to this other side of like, all right, I'm gonna let it all out. I'm gonna tell you guys as much as I'm comfortable with, and it just opened up a new door. And so right now, after that show, after the feedback from it, I applied for a grant last year and I received it to host arts and healing workshops. And I decided to host them at 3 different libraries across neighborhoods in Boston, in Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan. And the attendees get the opportunity to, well, only 12 attendees, because I love like intimate spaces and getting the chance to have these conversations. They get to view the artwork, we get to talk about it, and there's an arts activity or a wellness activity afterwards. So all of this kicked off from the art show, from me making the decision to draw what I wanted to draw, to express myself in that way. And I really think like this courage has inspired other people to show up in a certain way towards me, but also, you know, for themselves. So, in closing, I would say, you know, when I think about abundance, I think about being authentic, I think about being in community and being vulnerable. It's brought so much abundance. And it shows up through my creativity, through my business, through entrepreneurship. And a lot of times, like I was saying, we're kind of taught to like go into this room, you shake the hand, you say the thing, you know, it's my favorite color, whatever, like you do that. And I move away from that. Like I've moved away from this calculated, I'm gonna climb the ladder, I'm gonna check this box off, to really having these conversations and, you know, being in community and leaning on people and like saying things that might not necessarily make sense, you know, and just being honest. And I would say my journey has pretty much been the opposite of like the climb the ladder and doing all of those things. But I would say, even with all the good internal values and things I've shared, I do a lot of planning. I work a lot, you know, I do a lot of strategy and organization on the other side of that. But really, a lot of this is rooted in my values and my foundation. So I would say, I would actually challenge you guys to, you know, pause and think about what your values are and what abundance looks like for you right now. And pretty much like, how does it show up for you in your life? And it's so cool because when I got here, it was like, that was the question. And I put love. That's like a lot of love around me in so many different ways. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening and coming, and yeah, thank you.
So Ayana did send some images. Yeah, I'm gonna let you go through some of the images.
Sorry, I was so nervous. I was like, oh, I forgot that I had sent photos to go along with this, but I was like, I gotta say words and make sense. So this was from the Museum of Fine Arts. I was vending in May at Art in Bloom. It was my first time ever sharing my work in that capacity in the museum, so that was amazing. These are some of the some of my hand-painted glassware. So very, very different from what I started in 2014. But yeah, I have different types of glassware that I sell. These are some of the other products. I have archival prints and journals, as well as like greeting cards. And this was me at Forgiveness is a Place. Like when the show started, I actually didn't see the body of work before. Like the day of the show is when I saw the work hanging up. Like obviously I made it, but you know, I didn't see it. So when I saw it was a super emotional moment, on top of everybody telling me about their lives and you know, filling me up in that way. This is me and my nephew, Tristan, my abundance, showing him my art, and him remembering when I was making these pieces, like sitting on the floor, so that was great. And this is one of the pieces called Peace, and I think that might be, is that it? Oh, and this is Awakening. And Awakening was actually created, all right, I'm not gonna go on too long. But Awakening was created, I went to Vermont, and it was like the first birthday I celebrated by myself. It was like this whole breakthrough birthday, and I completed it on my birthday by myself in the middle of Vermont. It was like this super emotional moment where I realized like things were okay, and I realized, you know, I was finally getting to the point where I knew what I loved and what I enjoyed. Like people would be like, oh, what do you like to do? What do you, you know, what do you do for fun, that question. And I didn't know. I'd be like, I work, because I just shared my whole entire life with you guys. Like, I absolutely work. I can tell you about all the work. But in this moment, it was like, I love cooking, and I love chocolate, and, you know, all those things. So that was like, that's a very special piece. That's why it's called Awakening. So yeah, I think that's it. So thank you.